Fuck JakePaul.
Mike Tyson just called off his fight with Jake Paul after Jake abruptly decided to cancel the bout following their press conference. During the event, Tyson asked Jake a few simple questions and suggested making minor adjustments to the rules for their November 15th match. Jake, however, reacted as if his world had been turned upside down, yelling at Tyson as though the rule changes were a personal attack. This outburst is surprising, considering that back in March 2024, Jake was practically begging Tyson for this fight. He even agreed to Tyson's conditions and signed the contract without hesitation. Despite Tyson's lack of specific rules in the past, it doesn't mean he can't decide to change things up now. Let's rewind to the Fanatics Fest press conference on August 18th, where everything was supposed to go according to plan: a bit of hype, some trash talk, the usual pre-fight banter. But Jake Paul had other ideas. Instead of sticking to the script, he turned the event into a spectacle. Jake didn't just poke fun at Mike Tyson, he went all out, launching a verbal assault aimed at tearing down the legendary boxer. Jake mocked Tyson's age, called him washed up, and even took shots at his health issues, like a cocky upstart trying to dismantle a legend with words alone. It was clear that Jake wasn't just trying to sell the fight, he was attempting to break Tyson mentally before they even set foot in the ring. But Jake seemed to forget who he was dealing with. Tyson, the man with the most feared fists in the world, didn't even flinch. While Jake ranted, Tyson stood there, calm and collected, not uttering a word in retaliation, his face a cold, unreadable mask. It was as if Tyson was letting Jake dig his own grave, storing away every insult for the moment when he would deliver his real response. Jake might have thought he was winning the mind games, but in reality, he was setting himself up for a fall. Tyson's silence wasn't a sign of defeat. It was the calm before the storm. Jake wasn't even close to being ready for what was coming. As Jake's tirade continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted. What began as a typical press event quickly turned into something much more intense. The audience sensed it too. Jake's over-the-top confidence began to waver, especially when Tyson, with just the faintest of smiles, hinted at changing some of the fight's rules. It wasn't a dramatic reveal, but it hit harder than anything Jake had said all night. The room fell silent, and you could almost see the wheels turning in Jake's head as he tried to process what Tyson had just implied. For the first time that night, Jake's swagger took a hit, and a brief flash of doubt crossed his face. He found himself on the receiving end of a lesson in psychological warfare from a master. The energy in the room flipped, and suddenly, Jake wasn't the big bad wolf anymore, he was the one in danger of being devoured. Jake's biggest mistake was underestimating Tyson's game plan. He didn't realize that Tyson had been playing the long game from the start. That press conference wasn't just about hyping a fight, it was the opening round, and Tyson dominated without even throwing a punch.
Playing up.
Very painfully.
You're probably eager to know what rules Tyson introduced that sent Jake Paul into a meltdown. The first bombshell Tyson dropped was a knockout-only victory rule. That's right, no more winning by technical knockouts or scraping by with decision wins. The only way to claim victory would be to knock out your opponent, plain and simple. This rule was tailor-made for someone like Tyson, whose entire career has been built on delivering that one devastating punch that leaves his opponents seeing stars. But for Jake, this rule was a nightmare. His rise in boxing has been, to put it mildly, controversial, with whispers about the legitimacy of his victories always lurking in the background. Now, faced with the prospect of having to deliver a decisive knockout against one of the most feared punchers in history, Jake was staring down a terrifying reality. And Tyson wasn't done yet. He had another twist up his sleeve: 2 extra rounds. That's right, the fight, which was already set to push both men to their limits, was now extended, making it even more grueling. Tyson made it clear that this wasn't going to be a quick, flashy showdown, this was going to be a brutal test of endurance, a war of attrition where only the toughest would survive. For Tyson, who has gone toe-to-toe with some of the hardest hitters in history, 2 more rounds were nothing. But for Jake, whose commitment to the sport has always been questionable, this was a nightmare come to life. The impact of Tyson's announcements was immediate and brutal. Jake's unshakable confidence, that cocky grin he always wears like armor, vanished in an instant. The swagger was gone. Jake Paul, the YouTuber-turned-boxer who built an entire persona around being fearless, suddenly looked like a deer in headlights. His reaction was pure panic. He canceled the fight on the spot, crying foul and claiming the new rules were illegal. But everyone in the room knew that was nonsense. Jake's sudden decision to cancel wasn't a calculated move, it was a desperate attempt to escape a fight he knew he couldn't win. The truth was painfully clear: Jake was scared. The thought of stepping into the ring with Tyson under these new conditions had ripped away his tough guy facade, exposing the cracks underneath. His immediate reaction to pull the plug wasn't about legality. It was about survival, plain and simple. The backlash was swift and brutal. Jake's already shaky credibility took another nosedive. The story had changed. Jake wasn't the fearless fighter he pretended to be. Instead, he was exposed as someone who bit off more than he could chew and was now desperately trying to dodge the consequences. Tyson's rule changes didn't just alter the fight, they blew Jake's cover, revealing him as a man completely out of his depth.
Performance of a lifetime on November 15th, and the universe will align for all of its glory and good for God.
Be in shape, be in good shape, because your health depends on it.
Hey, you're the one that wanted 8 2-minute rounds. You want to make it 10 threes? Don't talk to me about shape. Don't talk to me about shape.
Stay in shape, you all right?
You want 10 threes?
Okay.
Let's be real, Tyson did exactly what needed to be done. If he's putting in all this effort, why should he waste his time on someone like JakePaul? Especially when there's talk that Jake's victories might not be as legitimate as he'd like everyone to believe. The rumors have been circulating that Jake, the YouTube sensation turned boxer, has been greasing palms and bribing referees to secure those TKO victories that have padded his record. These allegations aren't exactly new, but the timing couldn't be worse for Jake. The press conference had already shaken him, and now, with all eyes on him, these rumors were gaining serious traction. Suddenly, everyone was revisiting Jake's past fights, scrutinizing every decision and every TKO with a magnifying glass. It wasn't just about whether Jake could hold his own against Tyson anymore. People were starting to question if Jake's entire career was built on a house of cards. The idea that Jake might have been buying his way to victory hit the boxing community where it hurts. Boxing isn't just about fame or money, it's about raw talent, hard work, and the ability to take a punch and keep going, qualities Tyson embodies even now. So the thought that Jake, with his flashy lifestyle and deep pockets, could just bypass all that by bribing referees was scandalous, to say the least. As the rumors spread, the very foundation of Jake's career began to crumble in the public eye. And let's be clear, these weren't just idle gossip. The whispers had been there all along, especially whenever Jake won by TKO. There was always that uneasy feeling, like something didn't quite add up. Even his recent victory against Mike Perry had that same vibe, something about the way the fight was stopped, the decisions that seemed a little too convenient. It all started to make sense when Tyson introduced the knockout-only rule. The impact on Jake's reputation was immediate and brutal. The #FakeFighter started trending, and suddenly Jake wasn't just fighting Tyson, he was fighting to save his entire career. Even within the boxing community, the backlash was fierce. Fighters who had clawed their way up through the ranks, who had taken their losses and come back stronger, started to see Jake as someone trying to cheat his way to the top. The respect Jake had been craving from the boxing world was slipping further out of reach with every passing day. The mere idea that he might have bribed his way to victory was like a slap in the face to every fighter who had earned their place in the ring. And after canceling the fight, Jake practically invited the public's hatred on himself. He's always been the one trying to duck out instead of standing his ground. And let's not forget, these highly anticipated fights don't come cheap. A fortune is spent on promotions, and you can't just back out of a fight for no good reason. If Tyson didn't cancel even after battling severe health issues, who does Jake think he is to pull the plug like that? But honestly, do you really think Tyson's just going to let him walk away after all this? No way, it's far from over.